Productive Pastor 124, using Trello for project management. Back in the saddle, my friends. Welcome to Productive Pastor. This is the place online for ministry leaders to talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. I'm always stoked to be back with you. Last episode, we tried out having a video companion over on YouTube, and I told you that it was an experiment. And this episode does as well. And I've got to tell you, the experiment was really interesting on multiple fronts. And so if you're listening to the audio version of this on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you find podcasts, and you say, Chad, I kind of want to see some of the visual examples for this episode. Well, good news. Just cruise over the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/124 and grab the link, or just go on YouTube. And for my YouTube friends, first of all, thanks for letting me change up the feed a little bit. I've always posted the audio version of these on YouTube, but I can tell from the views that people are kind of liking this. And so I've got to figure out how do I want to respond to these interesting experiments. Let's just say that. So before we jump onto the main content, I just want to tell you about one thing about the Productive Pastor email list. You can get the link to that in the show notes. And I write almost weekly about deep dives into healthy ministry through strategic productivity. You can also find out about all sorts of other special things there, like new courses, offerings, all of that, other projects. So let's get straight into the content for this episode. So over the last month or so, I didn't plan this. I had the episodes in front of me when I was like batch creating the content, but I didn't realize that, hey, there's like a short project management series on the podcast here. We kind of did some every other episodes, but episode 120 is on Cal Newport's push-pull methodology. Episode 122 is I called Big Project Design. And we're actually kind of pulling from both of those episodes today. And so I've also created a Spotify playlist for all these series. Once this is done, you can find that in places as well. But project management is a skill, and it's a vocational capacity as pastors we can learn, and we absolutely need to learn. And for many of us, it takes getting to this visual level before we can begin really understanding it and sometimes creating our own approach to it. I've said before, productivity really exists in kind of two paradigms. You're either the engineer or you're the artist. And I'm absolutely in the artist category of that. I find that a lot of the tools that I use that live in that domain, they're I'm not going to say I'm pretty, because some of the stuff I do is not pretty at all, but there's definitely a visual dynamic that draws me towards certain tools that help me understand it. And many of you also know that my answer for just about anything in productivity, it comes back to Trello. It's almost a joke over in the Productive Pastor community on Facebook. People say, hey, Chad, how would you do that? My answer is going to be Trello. I always default to Trello. Now, I've got a course called Trello for Personal Ministry, and I've put it to bed because I want to figure out a couple of problems. Trello doesn't like me sharing files with hundreds of other people. So I've got to find some ways around that. I'm also going to kind of, change some of the content up a little bit. And then I'm going to perhaps move it over to a new course hosting software. So if you're wanting this course, it's on vacation for a little bit. You can get it when it comes off of vacation. But I love Trello enough to create courses about using it for ministry. It's one of the things that I just love to do, and I believe in it because Trello really helps me understand project management. It helps me understand what does it mean to move things, to stay on top of things. I used to do this with like giant pieces of paper and Post-it notes. I remember when we planted a church 10 years ago, I had a 12-foot long, I was a 3-foot by 12-foot long roll of paper that had hundreds of Post-it notes on it. And I had multiple of these for all sorts of different stuff. And what I would do is when I needed to work on it, I would roll it out on a floor and I'd work on it and I'd move stuff around. I'd check things off and then I would roll it back up. And in my truck, I had 5 or 6 giant rolls of paper, and I just prayed that the Post-it notes were going to stick on there. I like a visual side of project management, and Trello just does that. It's probably the best thing that's out there for it. Trello, in a lot of ways, it's digital Kanban technology, and Kanban is an approach to project management. It's actually a pull methodology, like we talked about in episode 120. Now, getting the pull side of this and the date side, that kind of stuff, it doesn't happen natively in Trello, but just the Kanban approach to moving things down the line is how I love to manage projects. So let's get into how you can use Trello for project ministry management. And I want to divide this into two areas, small and big. And we're actually going to cruise into Trello. I'm going to show you, a handful of things of what this looks like. And so the first thing that you really can do with this is that you set this up inside of Trello. And a small project is just that. It's a small project. That's what it's designed to be. And this is the kind of thing that can stick, natively inside of a card. And so we'll cruise over to Trello. We're looking at that right now. I'm just going to show you a handful of things of the way a small project can live inside of Trello. Like I said earlier, the whole project lives inside of one card. And so I've got, a couple things right here. This is a very, very simple version of my weekly dashboard because, my current weekly dashboard for this week has way too much information on it that I want to put out into the internet. So I made kind of a quick representation of the weekly dashboard. Look right here, yearly grant review. I click on that. I've got nothing in there. I've got it labeled. This is part of my work's annual conference. And so let's just come in here, create a checklist. Look at all disbursements for the year. Please, y'all, give me a little bit of credit here. I'm trying to work quick, not work right necessarily. I'm going to contact the pastors. I'm going to make sure forms, reports are filled out, make recommendations for next phase. So boom, that's right there. You've got checklists inside of here. You can also attach all sorts of things to it. You can put, other Trello boards in here. You can put a link down right there. You can even, add an image into it. And so this is a small project. This is going to be living just inside of this card. And I've got it inside of my holding deck in my my weekly dashboard. And so I can just move that card over. So it's like, hey, I'm going to work on this a little bit on Monday. So I can click this out. I got 2 of the 4 tasks taken care of. So when Tuesday rolls around, say, hey, this needs to get done this week. Make sure to I go in and click off those last 4 things. That's managing small projects. These are, things that might be multi-step. That's what's going on inside of them. I find that helpful for, just the little things as I try to delineate the idea of what a small thing is going to be. It's really, it's about the fact that it only has one timeline. It does have a timeline. It does have steps that might be repeated. You can move those checklists, the orders around inside of there. But really and truly, it's just one specific timeline. And almost always, I'm not depending on somebody else for that. Now, what I love about this is if when I'm done with this for the week, I can go over and I'll show you how you do this. I'm not actually going to do it because I don't have a place to do it at. But when I'm done for the week, or let's say, hey, things got crazy. I didn't have these things checked off. At the end of the week, when I create my next week's weekly dashboard, I can click move. And I can change which board it's going to go into and what list it's going to drop into. And so that whole task side is automatically moved over into the next week of what I have going on. That's one way that I like to manage, small projects. I like to keep them inside of the same place. Now let's talk about big projects. Now a big project, that's when I'm going to create a board for the whole project. One of the ways I also understand big projects are, a big project might actually have multiple timelines going on inside of it at the same time. Sometimes you might be working with multiple people, but it's not as clean and simple as, hey, I'm keeping this all in myself, and really this is just like a series of 5 or 6 related tasks that I need to get done. So this I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you a board I've created for a special product, whatever you want to call it. I'm actually releasing at the end of this year. I'm finally turning loose all of my sermon preparation worksheets that I've used for years. Folks have seen pictures of these on Instagram. I've shared my sermon worksheet. I know hundreds of folks have downloaded just the sermon worksheet, the one pager I have. I'm putting all of these together. I'm going to sell them for just a handful of days at the end of the year. If you want to find out about that, if you want to make sure that's coming there, 2 things you can do. One of them is kind of passive, one is super active. The passive one is just keep your eyes on social media. I'll be talking about it. The active one is to go sign up for the Productive Pastor email list. so you can find out when the waitlist sequence is announced and when the product goes on sale. It's going to be cheap, but it's only going to be sold for a couple of 3 days at the end of the year. So make sure you do that. But I'm going to go in here. I'm going to show you what I do in that scenario to help understand this. So here I am inside of Trello. I went and created a project for it, gave it a new board, and I create these 3 columns: a design phase, an in progress phase, and a finished phase. This is where Kanban really begins to happen, because what you see is I've got the spaces where all of the things are there, and I can move them alongside of this sequence as it moves on and as it goes on. That's the beauty of Kanban. And you can see I've also begun creating some simple checklists that are inside of here of what I've gotten done so far. I've also got some, work to do, work to finish out. This is going to be quick. Most of the content's already done. This is just about consolidating the content. So I'll go in and I'll build this out a lot more over the next couple of days. But what you'll see is the same exact things. I have my cards I can drop checklists into. I can have attachments. I can put images, all of this sort of stuff. If I'm working with somebody else, I can click members. And if I got a member in this board, I can add them into that as well. I can also create dates, due dates. I'm going to do that real quick because, that thing needs to get done. And so I'm going to go ahead and give myself that date for when this sequence needs to be done. So it now has December 10th, 11:33. That's going to remind me that I'm using that as well. I also like to build a key in here, and this is just for me to filter the types of tasks and the understanding of what's going on. And this is a very specific example of a big project workflow that I'm using in Trello. But think about that. There's always going to be a design phase. We talked about this inside of the episode 122. There's always going to be a design phase. There's always going to be a doing phase, and there's the finished phase. And this is how I use Trello. I do almost all of my larger projects inside of Trello like this for many reasons. There's a couple of stuff that's going on inside of this. When I finish a project out, I love that I can then archive the project in Trello, and it then becomes a reference point. So when I finish anything, or when I create any links for something, or if there's a landing page, or if there's, as in ministry, it was the registration page, all that kind of stuff. All of those final links always got dropped into the project file, because what it allowed me to do is the next time I had to do something similar to that, I kind of already had a template built out for that. That's what I love about Trello is if you design some sort of a generic big project management sequence, you can just build it out as a template, and then you can work off of that template every single time you do it. It makes project management so much easier. And I like the reduplication aspect of it. That's just kind of personal. So that wraps up our project management series. Now, it doesn't wrap up any work using Trello. However, actually next week we're going to be back, and I'm going to show you how to create a recurring event system in Trello, and that absolutely is the best place for it to live. So I'll see you back in the next episode. Make sure you check out the Productive Pastor community on Facebook. There's over 1,000 pastors there talking about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. And also, grab the Productive Pastor email list. That's the best place if you want to be part of the larger conversation and the larger thing that's going on inside of Productive Pastor. So I'm Chad. I will see you back in the next episode. And thanks so much for hanging out.